Oregon is a land of contrasts. From its alpine forests to its open eastern rangelands, to its big rivers and small streams, it's a land of silence and untouched natural wonders, where the Old West lives on and the dreams of the future sink roots and take hold. More than 12,000 ranching families call Oregon home. Many of them came here more than a century ago. Their ranches produce cattle, protect the state's natural landscape, and feed a growing world. And their careful stewardship of natural resources, from open space, grasslands, rivers, and streams, are also home to abundant wildlife. In fact, Oregon's ranches provide habitat for 70% of the state's wild animals, ensuring ongoing and often unnoticed protection of forage, water, and large expanses of land.
We cannot survive in a livestock farming venue without being good to the land. If we don't take care of it, it is not possible to sustain our operations. And so by taking care of it, we also are taking care of wildlife, and we're managing water, we're taking care of the natural environment, and that benefits all Oregonians.
I think as ranchers, we would like people to know that we live every day, morning and night, with our wildlife, and we enjoy seeing them and watching them, and we feel very protective about the wildlife that lives here with us.
We have all kinds of wildlife, and these meadows are the prime time bottom ground, the best land around. So the wildlife moves in, and they have the best of the best to prepare themselves for winter.
Historically, there's been incidences where somebody will no longer want to raise cattle or on a place. He wants to just enjoy the wildlife. And it never seems to work. The wildlife are there for a while, but then they move on because that's not, they seek habitat that's being managed. And the wildlife don't like it when the feed, the grasses are driving deal. It's not being harvested in an annual fashion like the grazing regimes that are in place. They don't like it there, so they just move over to where the next ranch is.
What a lot of people don't understand is that relationship, that what we do is paramount to the survival of the species, and without our input and the help of the ODF&W, it wouldn't be possible.
Near Roseburg, the Sandberg family, who ranch in the Umpqua Basin, have spent the last 2 decades helping to restore the once endangered Columbia white-tailed deer.
Well, our ranching operation is a family operation. We raise a lot of cattle and a lot of sheep here in Douglas County. Our operation is both ranches that we own and that we lease. Well, when we first came to Douglas County in 1980, I had an opportunity to help my father-in-law quite a bit and doing a lot of riding in the hills. I found myself in the middle of these Columbian whitetail, blacktail, turkeys, and I really enjoyed just riding along and seeing them and beginning to understand that they are part of the land here.
The Columbian white-tailed deer in Oregon are found in 2 different areas, one on the lower Columbia River, and the second population is located here in Roseburg, in Douglas County, primarily centered around the North Umpqua River. They were listed under the Federal Endangered Species Act in the 1970s and then listed under the State Endangered Species Act in the 1980s. And a recovery plan was formed to try to meet certain criteria in order to qualify them for taking off the list.
When we sat down as a family to create a management plan for the ranches we own and the ranches we leased, we looked very hard to see what direction we wanted to take our program. So we started with a forage-based management plan in which we enlisted burning, prescribed burning. We enlisted some farming practices, growing perennial crops. So we had crops for year-round use for our sheep and cattle.
We've planted trees, and we've got little oak patches that them whitetails seem to thrive in.
Delisting couldn't be done without the landowners, primarily the ag and livestock industry here in Douglas County, over 95% of the deer in this subpopulation reside on private land.
The bottom line is that it was a joint effort between state government and this state agency in particular, and private landowners and ranchers that helped get the Columbia white-tailed deer off the list.
The evidence, of course, is that the population's tripled in the last 15 years from less than 2,000 animals to now we estimate we've got between 6,000 and 7,000.
It's a sign that, that as ranching progresses in the future and as people learn what you can do, maybe more and more species can be removed from the list.
While ranching's contribution to wildlife goes often unnoticed, it's having a profound impact not only on the state's environment, but also its economy. A recent study by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife shows nearly 2.8 million people participated in wildlife-related activities in 2008. The total economic benefit of these things was $2.5 billion. How much of this would have been possible without committed wildlife stewardship from ranchers?
People love to go see Fish and Wildlife. They love to go to that quality Fish and Wildlife habitat. And a lot of that habitat quality is really directly because of the work of private landowners and ranchers.
Well, I think you gotta realize what most ranchers, what their love is. It's love for animals and a compassion for animals and a love for the outdoors. And with that in mind, you've got people that are out there trying to preserve that.
Oregon's 50% owned by private people. A majority of that, of the habitat for fisheries and wildlife is owned by private landowners, and some of the best habitat. And they do a tremendous amount. Oregonians wouldn't be able to enjoy some of the benefits to fisheries and wildlife without the cooperation of private landowners.
Ranchers in this state have a lot of land that they run their animals on, and so it's these folks that are out taking care of the land for their own animals that also provide an incredible environmental benefit for all of Oregon.
We look at ourselves as really being the front line of protection to make sure that species don't go extinct.
In Oregon, we've had tremendous support from the ranching community. Well, species like the sage grouse, like the pronghorn, you know, in and of themselves, these are kind of iconic creatures that occupy the West. And to maintain ranching and other uses that have occurred in the West for the last 100 or so years is really an important and integral part of keeping that conservation moving forward. Because without those players at the table and their support, it's going to be very difficult for us to move any sort of conservation effort forward.
Without ranchers and agriculture community, I think we'd have a lot less wildlife because a lot of the most productive lands are in private ownership.
You know, for us, it's almost like heaven. I can't imagine it being much better than what it is for us when we get up in the morning in a crisp morning like this to see the wildlife and know that what we have done has given them habitat and places to raise their young and feed for the winter, and there is just no feeling like it.